highlight and break down some areas of the position, and giving coaches the freedom to put their own stamp on it as well. So we'll get cracking here now. If that slide will change for me, sorry now. Okay, so why a specific webinar for goalkeepers? Why the focus on the position? So just a few points. So obviously, I think it's clear to everybody who's been watching the game over recent years the importance of the position, the importance of the goalkeeper's role. Obviously, the kickout is the number one. Another one in more recent times is in play, from open play. The goalkeeper's importance on the ball as an extra attacker from the back, really, in open play. So it's a specialized role. I always think of goalkeeping as like being an individual in a team sport. So you've kind of got the best and maybe the worst of both worlds, of being an individual sports person, yet you have to slot into and function as part of a team also, even though the role is obviously different to everybody else on that squad. So expecting versus hoping. So the goal is, and there are inter-county setups now which thankfully have started to do this, and some clubs as well, and it is something that can be rolled out in clubs, is by expecting, I mean that we are expecting to have goalkeepers coming through. I call it like a production line of goalkeepers coming through to the minor, to under 20 or under 21 and senior level, that are of a certain quality, that are able to do the things that are expected of them and that are needed and required in the modern game, as opposed to just hoping that we get a good quality young lad that's coming through and then we pin all our hopes in that fella. That we'd ideally have a pool of goalkeepers of a high standard coming through to senior level. So putting that focus, especially underage, giving the young goalkeepers the support and the training that's required. And that's the next point there, providing relevant training to goalkeepers who are eager to improve. Because one thing I've noticed from talking to people in different clubs in recent years is seems to be an issue in certain areas, that they're finding it hard to get young people, girls or boys, who want to play in goal. But of the young goalkeepers who do want to play in goal, they are really, really into the position. They're eager to learn. They're like sponges. You know, they're mad for information. They're mad to improve. So just being able to provide them with some support and some things to work with, they tend to lap it up. But it does seem to be an issue in some places that because it is a pressurized position nowadays, I suppose, trying to get young people who want to play in goal then can be an issue also. So providing support like that, be it in clubs or inter-county setups, can be a help there. Like I say, providing support to young goalkeepers. And that doesn't mean that every team needs to have a specialised goalkeeper coach, in my opinion. In a lot of cases, it could be a selector, or it could be somebody part of the backroom team who just has that role or responsibility, just to even be a sounding board for the goalkeeper, you know, a shoulder to lean on. It can be a lonely position when things start going against the goalkeeper. I can speak from experience there, but especially I always think of young goalkeepers, you know, 15, 16-year-olds there. The opposition are out to get them. They're out to crack them. Crack the goalkeepers, a term that you'd often hear these days now. And it can be lonely when the tide starts turning against the goalkeeper in there. So just having that backup, that support, because that psychological side of goalkeeping is absolutely huge. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a specialised goalkeeper coach per se. Working closely with the team management. So obviously the goalkeeper, but whoever is responsible maybe for the goalkeeper coaching or working with the goalkeeper, they have to have a good working relationship with the team management to know what the manager and what the team needs and requires from the goalkeeper. So that obviously that can be tailored into the goalkeeper's training then, that they're not working in different directions. Just a simple example, if the manager wants the kick-out strategy to be kick it out long to the midfielder 60 yards, there's no point in the goalkeeper coach working on short little kick-outs to the corner back or wing back in the sessions. Then, you know, it has to be tied into the overall game plan. And overall, the goal, producing robust, adaptable goalkeepers for the modern game. That is the ideal scenario at the end of the day. So it's looking at what's the end point and working back from there. I've just included these two images here because look, we have to hand it to Dublin. They put a system in place by all accounts a number of years ago where they focused on the area of goalkeeping, the position of goalkeeper, and from underage up, they got their young goalkeepers working off a template. Not that they were all robotic in what they were doing, but there was a template. There were certain tick boxes that had to be checked And you see now coming through the senior level, you see obviously Stephen Cluxton on the left and Evan Comfort on the right, that when Stephen Cluxton hasn't been able to play, there's a queue of similar style goalkeepers that can do the same job, you know. So regardless of who's in goal, obviously there'll be individual differences in characteristics and qualities that will come to play as well. But overall, the goalkeeper, they can slot a different goalkeeper in to still carry out the functions for the team. And I think that is the end goal, be it, like I say, for clubs or county setups, is that there is this pool of goalkeepers coming through who are able to tick those boxes, and it's not just a coincidence. So, goalkeeper philosophy. So I suppose maybe just a question to maybe ask ourselves: what is our belief about the role of the goalkeeper, and what do I want my goalkeeper to be able to do for the team? So some managers might want their goalkeeper just to stick to their line, you know, kick the ball out to number 8, number 9, kick it out long, and that's it. Just stop the ball going into the goal from there. Keep it simple. Other managers or management teams might want their goalkeeper being more of an active role, on the ball, coming out, an extra man, overlapping from the back. You know, there's 101 different things. But I suppose it's just, once we're clear on it ourselves, what do we want from our goalkeeper, so that then the goalkeeper knows what is expected of him or her in that team. Sometimes managers can get frustrated. They want the goalkeeper to do certain things. The goalkeeper may not be able to, or may not know how to do those things. So it leaves it with two choices, really: either tailor a strategy around the goalkeeper's ability, obviously kick-out strategy being the primary one, or else trying to upskill the goalkeeper through relevant training to be able to carry out the functions for the team. So obviously I'm a little bit biased towards goalkeeping and goalkeepers. I do think it's, if not the most important position on the pitch, it's definitely up there. It's one of them. And a lot of the times it's not a position that maybe tends to be focused on until there's a problem, and then it may be too late. So I always think, the goalkeeper is like your foundation for the team. If you have a solid goalkeeper who's in there, you don't need to worry about it anymore. It's working away. You can worry about the rest of the strategy, out the field, in possession, out of possession, defensive setups, etc., etc. But it's when something starts to go wrong, we might start looking at the goalkeeper, and then it can be kind of panic station. So just, what do I want from my goalkeeper? What do I expect from him or her? And am I providing this? Are they developing those skills, those tick boxes that I need during the training sessions? So the goalkeeper, the job of the goalkeeper. I might just ask for maybe a bit of feedback here, if that's possible. Eamon, Moss, is it possible for people to just, maybe, if there's a chat box there, maybe to put in what they think maybe the job of the goalkeeper is? Maybe
yes, so if people want to just use the chat box to type in, we can relay the information back to you.
Yeah, I can't see the chat box now, so if you want to call, if something does come in, you can call it out there. That'd be great.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So it can be as basic as you like. The job of the goalkeeper, basically, there might be a couple of different points.
They're very shy, Bunny.
That's fine. I'm always like that in these calls as well. Wait for somebody else.
Start an attack.
Start an attack, yeah. I'd agree there, yeah.
Start each attack.
Yeah.
Restarts. Calming influence. Goalkeeper is only one on the pitch with a full view of all the action at all times.
Yeah, super. All those spot on.
Keep the flow of the game going. Slow it down if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Communication vital. Organise defence. Communication with defence. Act as a quarterback.
Yeah. They're great. There's a lot of variety there, and there's a few trends as well, which is very interesting.
Saving shots.
Yeah.
Carry messages from management onto the pitch, I suppose, yeah, with the more 4 and gone now, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, interesting, yeah.
Organised defence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the whole communication side of things really coming through there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Organised attack, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to get the feedback of what the job is. Will I continue on there? There's great feedback there. Thanks a million, everyone.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so very, very interesting, genuinely hearing that there. It's interesting that saving shots only came in towards the end. I'd be convinced if maybe 15, 20 years ago, that would be up near the top. Starting attacks, restarts, quarterback role, definitely like kickouts, gaining possession, huge these days. And communication as well. I would say, as you might, I couldn't see it, but starting attacks, possession, and communication seem to be the two main ones there. So I'll just go through this quickly here, and this isn't something that I dreamt up myself now, the goalkeeper's job. This is from a goalkeeper's workshop there from the start of last year, I'd say, just before the whole lockdown madness started kicking in. So the job, and this isn't a set in stone list at all, by the way, so you could feel free to add it. Again, it's just to get us thinking. So reading the game, job of the goalkeeper, as I think was mentioned there, knowing when to slow it down, the flow of the game management, huge part of it. Stopping scores, that's our shot stopping or stopping scores directly. Setting up attacks, so be it from open play, from kickouts. Talking to defenders. So I would say, like, there's a difference between organising defence and talking to defenders. Obviously, organising the defensive structure, whatever the setup is, the team setup, and making sure the defenders are doing their job. But talking to defenders as well, and I might touch on things the next slide, but it's almost like interpersonal skills and even a bit of human psychology comes into it. You know, it's like coaching players or managing players. Sometimes a defender might need a bit of an arm around the shoulder. You know, they might have slipped, the man got in for a goal or a point. You know, it's not the time to come out barking at him in front, or her in front of whatever crowd is watching. You know, they've been showing up enough. So having those people skills, it could be a quiet word, you know, running out to a centre back, running out to a full back, just having a quiet word in the ear, you know, like, that was a great hand in there. Now, you know, just keep it up, that type of thing. So that bit of awareness, and I almost call it personal skills. So communication, huge as well there. And just to take it maybe a step further to the must-dos. So these are, for want of a better word, the non-negotiables that a goalkeeper must carry out. So dealing with all high balls. And this doesn't mean just coming out and absolutely dominating the square, the small square. Dealing with high balls is decision making, knowing when to hold the line, getting an early call. Communication, again, huge. Like an early call and the goalkeeper staying on his or her line can be as effective or as important as the goalkeeper coming out and fielding the ball and trying to play it out. So just dealing with high balls, definitely hugely important. Reassuring defenders, as I touched on there earlier, I won't go through that again. Controlling defenders. So defenders, they might not always admit to it, but they want to feel like the goalkeeper is in control behind them. It just gives that sense of security. A goalkeeper who has the confidence and has that controlling authority behind them just gives that sense of calm. And I think that was mentioned there as well in the feedback there. And over developing a sense of calm that flows through the team from the very back. Shot stopping, of course, it's still hugely important, even though there are the kickouts, you know, but you could get one shot towards the end of the game that could be the winning or losing of the game as well, so it can't be neglected. And communicating, and just to focus on this for a second, clear, concise and constructive, because sometimes, and I know myself being younger, you're told to be loud as a goalkeeper, and it's something I would have had to work on when I was younger. But be loud, make sure everyone can hear you, make sure you can be heard from the stand and stuff. And sometimes you'll find goalkeepers are shouting for nearly the sake of shouting to be heard. Whereas I'm a believer in being clear, constructive, concise with the message. And a little tip on that I have always found very, very effective is if you can deliver a message with a name. So if my centre back's name is Johnny, if I say, come on lads, get tight, or if I say, Johnny, get tight, that's going to land much more effectively with Johnny rather than just a blanket statement for everybody. So that clear, constructive message, but concise, to the point as well. Communication, and if the communication is effective, it can prevent an awful lot of stuff developing in front of us. Organising defensive structure, I think we mentioned that as well. Accurate from kickouts, of course. The kickouts, it's a non-negotiable now. It's a huge part of it. And being an assertive presence in goal. So that is very more to do with body language, position in the goal. Communication can form part of that. Just being that assertive presence in the goal. The worst thing, I've never played as a back, or definitely not in the full back line. But I'd imagine the last thing a back wants is a very, very quiet goalkeeper where they're almost looking over their shoulder, wondering, geez, is your man or is your one still there behind me? Or are they there? Just it gives the backs a tremendous sense of security, and that flows throughout the team as well. So these are the can-dos, we call them. The nice to haves on top. Some of these, it could be debated, should be put into the must-dos or the non-negotiables. Again, these aren't set in stone at all. So sweeping, balls over the top, that type of thing, being able to clear it left and right foot and hand. Excellent footwork. So yeah, I would argue some of these probably could be on the previous slide as well. Footwork, very, very important. Kicking 45s and frees, you wouldn't say it's a non-negotiable, but if a goalkeeper is an excellent dead ball kicker, it's a great bonus to have in the team, and the extra outlet coming out with the ball from the back. So again, look, the idea of breaking down the position like this is just to maybe get us thinking maybe a little bit more deeply about the position, and can we incorporate some of this, or when should I bring my goalkeeper into drills with the outfield players, when should they be working their own, that type of thing. Might just get us thinking. So the goalkeeper, him or herself, so to break down the characteristics of the goalkeeper. So we've just split it into a few areas. So if I asked everybody, what would you say are the characteristics of a good goalkeeper? Some people might have a certain size, a height in mind. Some people might have a certain type of personality in mind, a loud character, an aggressive type character. It could be a calm character. So physical is the first one. So our goalkeeper ideally should have maybe at least one outstanding attribute. That could be size, it could be height, it could be agility. They mightn't have the height, they might be 5'10", 5'11", but they might have tremendous agility. It could be timing, it could be power, it could be that explosiveness in around the square. So what physical characteristics do I want from my goalkeeper? The mental or psychological side of it, and it's a huge part of goalkeeping, and I really think for younger goalkeepers as well, it's a huge side of it, and it can be hard as a coach to develop it or to know how to develop it, but I think it's an area that can't be neglected, because the pressure with the position, being able to handle that pressure. So what characteristics, calm under pressure, would be an example there that I'd like to see from my goalkeeper. Have they confidence in themselves, confidence in their ability? Do they back themselves in the pressure situations? These are hugely important, but again, this is just to get us thinking, and the mental side of it is a skill as well, which can be improved. And like any skill, certain players are further down the road with it than others, and some need more help than others, and vice versa. The technical characteristics of a goalkeeper. So can my goalkeeper carry out the actions that are required of him or her on a consistent basis, basically? So again, I'm not going to give a list of technical characteristics that I would think my goalkeeper should have, but they should have their skill set should be of a high standard, ideally. So the technical side of things. And then there's the tactical side of it. That's the game management, the reading the game. Have they the tactical awareness to execute the appropriate action at the right time? So there might be a time when the long kick out over a high press is on, but maybe it's a high risk kick and the game is tight and it's coming towards the end. Maybe that's not the time for it. So having that understanding and that appreciation of stages of games, the flow of a game, as was mentioned there. So those types of characteristics. So just to maybe focus in on one or two of them, for a moment. So looking through the literature, there's little, if any, research at the moment. I think there's some on their way, but with regard specifically to Gaelic football goalkeepers, a lot of it at the moment is based on soccer goalkeeping, and obviously there's an element of crossover there, and there's stuff that can be tailored. But and a lot of the findings, when you've experienced in the game, they're common sense, but it's always nice to have it backed up by some research. So I'm not going to go through all this in detail, but it's very interesting reading. And this was a review of the current literature in relation to soccer goalkeepers. So it took a broad spectrum of the research that was done. And I'll just summarize it here on the next bit. So there's more physically demanded of a goalkeeper in the last 30 minutes of games. Now, bearing in mind, this is from soccer research, but I think we might agree that in the last 20 minutes of a game, 15, 20 minutes of a Gaelic football game, the pressure, more often than not, is really ramped up on the goalkeeper. That's when the game starts opening up. That's when there may be more goal chances. That's when the kickouts, there's much more riding on every kickout then. Game might be in the melting pot. So I would argue that not even more physically demanded, but more psychologically demanded of goalkeepers in the last 30 minutes of games. And then from a coaching point of view, or a management point of view, are we providing enough of these types of scenarios in our training sessions to prepare our goalkeepers for this pressure towards the end of games? For example, rather than maybe just playing backs and forwards, do we play a 10-minute scenario where it's the last 10 minutes of a game, the Blue Bibs are up by 2 points, it's a kick out for the opposition goalkeeper. Right, goalkeeper, what are you going to do? How are we going to play out the last 10 minutes of the game? Providing those scenarios, providing those situations, so that when it comes in game time, then the goalkeeper is mentally prepared as well as physically prepared for that. Games or small-sided games are not enough for the skill development of goalkeepers, was a finding as well. And I can speak from personal experience as well from this, that if the only action a goalkeeper is getting in training sessions, when I say action, I mean specific, like goalkeeper-based stuff, is in the game at the end of training or in a possession game, which is mainly for the outfielders, they might be getting work, they might be getting a workout, but they're not specifically developing a specific skill. For example, if a team manager wants the backs or wants the team in general to develop their tackling, to work on their tackling, they more often than not start off with some drills, maybe unopposed, focusing on one or two technical aspects of tackling. Then it's built up into contact, then it's brought into a game situation. So the same is true for goalkeepers. So there might be a technical thing to do with diving, to do with 1v1s, to do with kickouts, that should ideally start in drill-based or in a low-intensity way, and then brought into a game at the end. And that way, the skill that's been worked on can be applied to the game situation. So again, it's just maybe something to bear in mind. And I'm aware that it's not always easy for managers and coaches who have to think of the entire team and not always the goalkeeper, but maybe just something to keep in mind. Goalkeepers cover 50% less distance. Like I think we all know, look, the goalkeepers don't cover the same distance outfield players, and the aerobic capacity and sprint distance versus outfield players. And yes, that's common sense, but I suppose, is there a need then for goalkeepers to be doing all the running that the outfield players are doing? Like the majority, and again, the research shows the majority of goalkeepers' actions are of an explosive, power-based nature. So, common sense would tell you that the majority of their training should be based on that, doing 400-600 meter runs. Like, is that there might be a time and a place for it, but is it going to benefit them doing that all the time with the outfielders? So again, it's just something to keep in mind, that those short explosive movements are probably more game specific for our goalkeepers. So just to focus in on the technical side again, the technical development. And what we did was we just broke the position down into the 5 technical components. So you can see there, you've got your shot stopping, which consists mainly of diving, 1v1s, handling, parrying, that type of thing. Footwork and positioning, hugely important. Can be taken for granted when somebody has it down to a T, but sometimes all you need is to watch back on video or watch back on replays, the impact that poor positioning can have on situations. Kicking, so ideally with both feet. And that doesn't mean that a goalkeeper should be expected to kick the ball out with their left foot 70 yards and kick the ball out with their right foot 70 yards, pinpoint. But if a goalkeeper is right-footed, for example, it's a huge benefit if they have the ability to be able to readjust and knock a quick ball out with their left foot without having to readjust and come all the way around the ball and lose that. Even a half a second is a huge amount of time on a kick out where the whole picture can change in front of them. On the ball, the extra man, as we said, and high balls. So even if we're thinking of things ourselves, again, I'm thinking of coaches maybe on the call here, how can you maybe incorporate the goalkeeper into training? Having the position broken down into these 5 areas here, you could have a different focus for each night. You could have a focus for a block of 2 weeks where you want to bring their footwork up to a certain standard. So you might do a bit of shot stopping, a bit of handling, and then the main focus of the session could be on footwork and positioning. And you can incorporate shooting and different things into that. But what is the focus of the session for the goalkeeper? And more often than not, it'll be one of these 5 areas here. So it can just help simplify it and provide that focus rather than the goalkeeper working with somebody and just kind of going through drills or going through certain things with no real focus or no real purpose to it. What are we getting out of it? And decision making at the bottom. Decision making is a goalkeeper lives or dies by their decision making. Be it shot stopping, what's the correct technique to use? Again, that will come from the training. Decision making, kickouts, obviously taking the right option. High balls, will I punch? Will I catch? And it all comes down to doing it in training, making it an instinctive decision then in the game. Now, I've just included these 4 images here. So currently, these would be 4 of the best kickers of a dead ball of the kick out in the game at the moment. And I would just ask you just to have a look at the 4 pictures and see what commonalities can you see between them. Is there anything you notice, anything you spot? They're all at the same phase of their kick out there. I'm just going to focus on the kick out for a second. So just a few pointers on the kick out, and I just wanted to focus on this because obviously it's of huge importance, in the ladies' game, in the men's game these days, underage, senior. It's possession. It's a chance to gain possession where you have the ball in your hands and you want to keep it in your hands. So these are just a few things, a few pointers that you could look out for.
Brendan, we have a few comments coming in there, just people answering your questioning. So one person is asking, the ball is close to the ground. Another person, the arm is out for balance. Mm-hmm. And the last person said they're all looking at the ball. So that's basically the moment.
Right. Thanks for the comments, lads. I can't see them here, so that's great. Thanks, Emma. And spot on. Yeah, so I was just saying these are maybe some simple little things that if you've got a 16-year-old goalkeeper, for example, in the next training session there, and they're having bother, the kickouts to his right maybe are just slicing a bit or something. These are things you can maybe look out for in their technique that may help. Now, it's hard to say without seeing someone kicking and stuff, obviously, but hopefully it may be of use. So, number 1, staying tall over the ball and crest of the jersey. Now, what I mean by that is you'll hear, I'd have heard, keep your chest up, that type of thing. But I'm big into cues, verbal cues. So the crest on the jersey, I'd imagine if there's a laser beam coming out of that crest, that laser beam should be firing out the field. So that means your chest is up, you're tall over the ball. If that laser beam is firing down at the grass, then you're too far over the ball. The technique is going to falter. You'll slice or you'll hook the kick. So I'll put those pictures up again in a moment now, but you'll see each of the kickers, they're nice and open. The chest is open. The crest of the jersey is facing out the field. Shoulders are square. A 2 to 3 step approach, ideally. Now, this can take some work. It doesn't come naturally all the time. But by keeping the kick out, the approach to 2 to 3 steps, it allows for every type of kick out to still be hit. Whereas when I was younger now, I wasn't thinking of this, and sometimes I would be 7 or 8 steps back from the ball. So automatically I was eliminating the option of the short kick out, or else by the time I got up there, the opposition would have pressed up. So by being, I would say 3 steps back max, it allows for every type of kick out to be hit, and it keeps the opposition on their toes because they can't stand off completely, or if they press up too high, it can, it just keeps them guessing. So the angle of the ball, and I found this a huge thing with young goalkeepers as well. Sometimes it seems like such a simple thing. Again, sometimes they might be slicing the ball a certain way or coming across the ball. Just giving themselves half a yard or half a foot more of an angle at the ball can make a huge difference to really strike through the ball. Footwork is huge, and that's where I suppose the goalkeeper's kick out is different to other dead ball kickers. Look at a rugby kicker or even a Gaelic football free kick taker off the ground. They have maybe 2 to 3 minutes to start visualizing their kick. They know where the ball is going to end up. They know what action they need to carry out. Whereas a goalkeeper, pardon the pun, but they need to think on their feet. They might see a kick out is onto their right out long, then that option is blocked off. So they need to readjust their footwork, their mindset, their decision making to be able to get around the ball and hit the left wing long. So that takes very, very good footwork to be able to do that efficiently and quickly whilst maintaining the technique, and it takes practice. Vision, huge thing for the kick out. This is ideally prior to the kick, so having the head up, head on a swivel, I always say. So coming out with the ball, just being aware from the corner back out what's going on, having that picture in your mind, placing the ball right. I know my corner back, the corner forward is kind of cheating off him a small little bit there, might be on if I'm stuck. Just constant awareness, vision, peripheral vision, huge. The opposite arm swing, and I was delighted to hear that coming in the comments there. Again, it's something that can be neglected, but you'll see from the 4 kickers there, and any good place kicker off the ground, the opposite arm. So for a right-footed kicker, for example, the left arm, I'm doing it here as I'm speaking just out of habit, but that gives the leverage, that gives the balance to really plant that standing foot in and allow the striking foot to come right through the ball. And it's the same for kicking off the hands. If you watch any good kicker or free kick taker or good goalkeeper kicking out in ladies football, that opposite arm swing just allows for the balance to really get a good strike through the ball. And what I would say is, for any goalkeeper looking to improve their technique, or if technique is an issue, whether they're at the pitch on their own or they're at the other end of the field where the outfielders are training, take the distance element away. So I love doing it myself in front of the net behind the goal, or even in front of the goals, just maybe aiming for a post, aiming for the crossbar. You're not worried about distance. You're focusing on that connection, hitting that sweet spot with the ball. And if you're hitting that sweet spot more often than not with the correct technique, the distance is going to come anyway. Even at the start of training sessions, I would often get goalkeepers kicking into the goal or kicking into the net behind the goal before they go into just kicking the ball out the field to the outfielders, because it just hones in that technique before they start, rather than just putting the ball down and flaking it out as far as they can. I'm a huge believer in the technique comes first, and the distance and everything else follows. And if possible at all, obviously there's dealing with minors and stuff, but if goalkeepers or if a coach can video their goalkeeper kicking out the ball, ideally from behind the goalkeeper, visuals can say an awful lot more than words, or can say more than words. When a goalkeeper sees themselves, if they slice the kick to the right, a lot of the times they'll notice, I was too far over the ball and my angle was wrong. They'll spot things themselves. So I find myself as well, when you have it on video, it makes a huge difference in self-analysis. So with those points there, I hope that's not overloading, but just have a look at those 4 images again. I'll just leave it up for a few seconds. So what really stands out to me is that opposite arm. See Stephen Cluxton's left foot, his right arm, the rest of them, the left arm coming out. The left foot is planting firmly, or is about to be planted firmly, eye on the ball, as was said as well. So, and that the crest on the jersey, that's a huge thing, keeping the chest up, staying tall. And hopefully that's just a few kind of pointers, like I say, that you can look out for in your next session, when your goalkeeper's kicking out the ball with in whatever match situation you're playing. This is a drill. I mentioned at the start about being conscious about not just banging a load of drills up, but I find this one can tick a lot of boxes here, and it can be varied, it can be simplified or progressed as much as you want. Basically, what it is I love using the juvenile goals, the under 12 goals on pitches. So you'd have 3 of those juvenile goals placed where you can see them there. The goalkeeper is either, or the ball is either in the hand of the goalkeeper or on the ground, depending on the age group and the sport. So by having the goals there, the idea is that encourages a drilled kick. So that kick that gets from A to B, low trajectory. So for example, there might be somebody who is giving the goalkeeper a call. You might have the goals numbered. It could be 1, 2, 3. So they call 1 low. That means it's drilling it into that goal, number 1, out in the wing, no bounce, hitting the net, good clean strike. The players out behind the goals there, ideally if you have receivers, if you have the bodies, but if not, they can be kick zones. So they could be zones that are laid out with cones. So the goalkeeper has to react. You could start off, what I would normally do is start off, give the goalkeeper maybe 2 kicks at each goal where they know where they're going to be kicking. So for example, the first 2 kicks are going to be to the goal on their left. The next 2 kicks are going to be down the centre. Third set, obviously, to the right. Then you can bring in long kicks, so they're kicking over the goal. So that's where you have your kick zone with the cones, or else you have a receiver who's either standing there or else running into that space. The idea of having the receiver is the goalkeeper is still looking to hit the goal or to hit over the goal. Okay, so he knows the area in the field that he's hitting. The brain, it's registered in the brain, the technique that's required to hit that area of the pitch, and it's up to the runner to get there then. And like I said, this can be progressed where you have a coach or somebody else who's calling the goalkeeper then. So the goalkeeper places the ball, they're standing over the ball. The coach might call 1. So the goalkeeper, it brings in the footwork element. They have to adjust themselves to be able to hit number 1, be it drilling to goal or drilling over the goal. The coach might mix up the call. They might call 1 and then they might change that call to 3. So again, that's in a match situation. Kickout is on, all of a sudden that avenue is blocked off. You need to readjust and get around the ball, hit the opposite wing. So I hope that makes sense there. But you can get an awful lot out of that drill, and it's one that even a goalkeeper, because I know there's not always the bodies at a session to work with a goalkeeper, but they can work at that on their own as well. A few balls, a couple of goals, and the position of the goals can be moved as well. You can kick between the goals as well to try and dive the needle stuff. You can bring the goals down to kind of the corner forward position where you have a receiver standing behind the goal and a corner back, but the goalkeeper must chip over the corner forward to the corner back. So you can get creative with it and put your own stamp in it, but that would be one that I would highly recommend. Again, if there's questions about that or anything, I can take those when we're doing that. And ultimately, nearly finished, but ultimately the vision is, as I said at the start, is that we have this production line, be it in our clubs, in our county, of a high standard of goalkeeper coming through that is mentally able for the position and able for the demands of the game, because it's not always easy, and also physically and technically able for what's required as well. So that, like I say, is the ultimate goal. If anybody wants any more ideas or has any questions after tonight's call, I'll put up my contact links there in a second. I have a YouTube channel that I started up a couple of years ago. To be honest, it started as a little bit of crack, but it started to gain a bit of traction and was getting good feedback. So it's just got some ideas up there for goalkeepers or for coaches, for things when the goalkeeper is working on their own, just to put a bit of a point to their practice and put a bit of purpose in it. So feel free to check it out there on YouTube. If you just search my name, it should come up there, and hopefully there might be some things of benefit there for you or for your goalkeepers. And overall, that's it. Thanks very much for listening. It would be great if we were in a room doing this, and we could physically meet, but it was great to have the feedback, and thanks for that. And I hope you found some of that beneficial. And feel free to get in touch with me there through any of these, like I said, the email or the Twitter or anything else. Okay, and I'm happy to take questions now if there's any questions. Thanks, guys.
Hi, Brendan. Thanks very much for that. That was excellent. I suppose it really brings home the importance of the goalkeeping position. Also, it was great to see so many goalies on tonight. I really liked, I suppose, your idea, of maybe having a member of management and the management team mentoring the goalie, and also the importance, I suppose, of having, kind of specific training and coaching for the goalkeepers at their sessions. I suppose just if anyone has any questions, I suppose you can maybe put them into the chat bars there, and we'll get Brendan to answer them. We have just a few questions that come in before, Brendan.
Okay.
So there was 3 questions that came in before. So the first one: what was the toughest game you ever played?
Toughest game I ever played. I would say actually, I'm trying to think. Our All Ireland semi-final with the club there a couple of years ago in the intermediate run that we had, we played 2 mile house, was it?
2 mile pot house.
2 mile pot house. That's it. I knew it was kind of but yeah, at that game, the tension, I suppose, there was so much at stake for both teams. It was a low-scoring game. It was tight. There was a couple of black cards and a red card. It was just, I don't know. I've never experienced a game like that where you could just feel the tension so much.
Huge prize at stake as well.
Huge for both clubs, yeah, and there was nothing in it at the end of the day. It could have gone either way. I would put that up there.
I suppose apart from the club county training, how long would you spend on your own doing goalkeeping work, Brendan?
I suppose the life of a goalkeeper, a lot of it, you do have to do it on your own, because you have to tie into what the team is doing as well. For my own training, I would do a good bit before the team session, and working with the lads now with Kerry, we would get a lot of our work done before the actual, say, official training session starts. So if the session is due to start at 6:15, we would be on the pitch maybe from 6:05, and we get through our warm up, we get our technical stuff done then. So a lot would be before training like that if possible at all, and then depending on the training schedule and stuff, maybe an evening or two during the week, be it kicking on your own or with somebody else working on shot stopping or something like that.
Of course, yes. And I suppose the third question then, any ideas or drills for footwork for a goalkeeper?
There's loads. You use ladders, cones, hurdles, all that type of thing. Just to keep it simple, I suppose, one that I would bring into most warm-ups and do myself is just a straight line of 5 cones, and just, that slalom, quick feet type of movement in and out of the cones into a set position for a shot at the end. But the key is for any footwork drill like that is you don't want, the one sound you don't want to hear is the feet clicking off each other. The feet should never hit off each other. They should be kept shoulder width apart as much as possible throughout all the footwork.
Yeah.
So it just keeps it tidy. It makes sure you're not going to trip over a lace or something as well, and you're always balanced as well.
Yeah. There's another question then, I suppose, here. Thanks. Have your preference to type of kickout is best or most useful? So somebody's trying to get a bit of inside info on you, I think.
A type of kickout. No, the perfect scenario, ideally, what you want from any goalkeeper is that they can hit any type of kicker. They have it all in the locker, be it that low trajectory driller to a lateral runner or a kick out over the top. It is great if you can get one away over a press, because that will just change the game. If a team is trying to press up on the goalkeeper and all of a sudden he or she is beating that press with a kick, all of a sudden the opposition, they're looking at each other, they have to drop off, and it just opens the game up for you as a goalkeeper. And variety, and I know coaches have been saying it for years. Remember, under 12, under 14 coaches saying vary the kickouts. But if you have that variety, it just keeps the opposition on their toes, and it gives you more space to play with then as a goalkeeper.
Yeah. And there's another question from John Breen. Gloves type and size for younger underage goalkeepers. Any recommendations?
It can be a personal thing. Type and size. I always like a kind of a narrow fitting, light kind of glove. Some goalkeepers then will prefer the bigger, bulkier types. In terms of brands, it's personal preference again, and some of them are crazy prices nowadays as well for a pair of gloves, and you don't get that long out of them. Hard to pick one, but whatever suits you best, and just go with that.
Absolutely. Best way to cope with a press is another question just after coming in.
Okay, best way to cope with a press is easier said than done, of course, but stay calm. Body language and staying in control is huge. You don't want to blink, before the opposition. Again, training, ideally, if you want to throw everything at a goalkeeper in training, so that in a match then they can just, it's like going to the files and pick out the file. Oh, this press, I've seen this before. This is what I need to do here. Obviously, you'll have to think on the spot as well. I always remember then with the seniors with Kerry, like often I used to find the games, even the big ones in Croke Park, I used to find them easier than the training sessions trying to hit the kickouts, because if they were coming off in training when the opposition knew what you were trying to do and stuff in training, in a game then it was often easier. So best way to do the press ideally is to look and you go over it, but not to be too intricate either. If the team is pushed right up on top of you, if you're really trying this eye the needle stuff to the full back line and stuff, sometimes you might be just better off hit your best target long, and it'll stretch the opposition then maybe.
Yeah. I suppose just there's another few questions there, Brendan, still. I suppose, what's your preference on what size tee or cone you use? Some inter-county keepers kick off the ground now.
Yeah, I would, again, it can be a personal thing. Personally, I prefer off the ground or as low as possible. During the summer, particularly when pitches are better, I would often kick off the ground myself. And I know much more keepers are tending to go for the lower size tees now. I just find with the lower type of tee, or as kicking off the grass, you've more control over the kick, particularly when you're placing them. I find the higher tees are grand if you're just launching a ball 70, 80 yards down the field, and distance is your only concern. But I find the lower tee, you can just manipulate the ball a bit better. You can come around it with the inside of the foot. You can chip it over somebody. You can drill it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll just take one or two more, I suppose. Tips and cues, I suppose, after a goalkeeper makes a mistake, I suppose.
Yeah, this is where the psychology side of it comes in. And yeah, again, people might have different cues. You'll see goalkeepers, sometimes a goal will go in, and I suppose for Gaelic football is different to most sports, is the ball starts with the goalkeeper again right after, like, so it's huge pressure. Sometimes you'll see them, they might kick the post, clean the studs off the post after. It can be kind of a reset button. I know I would have tried things like that before, where a goal goes in and you'll have that moment where you're cursing yourself. As a goalkeeper, you'll always feel there's something you could or should have done to stop it. But then, like that, or clinking the studs off the post, or it could be just clapping the gloves twice. It's just like hitting that reset button, like, right, next play.
Yeah.
Move on. That takes practice. That's not something you can just decide the night before a game. Like, that takes practice to be able to switch mode. But having some cue like that is a very good idea.
Yeah. I suppose another question: what things included in the goalkeeper's kit bag that should be brought out on the field and to the goals for games?
So the tee, obviously, are more than one tee. You can never have too many, but definitely have more than one. You get a cheeky corner forward or something who'll run off with it. It happens. The tee, a hat as well. Sometimes a hat in the sun, it may or may not be useful, but have the hat in the bag. Spare pair of gloves as well, especially if conditions aren't great, or the gloves can split. So if possible, if you have a second pair of gloves, have a second pair of gloves in the bag. And they'd be the three main ones, really. Yeah, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. They'd be the three ones now. Yeah.
I suppose the last question is here. Any advice and tips for differing weather conditions as a goalkeeper, wet, sunshine, wind, etc., I suppose?
Yeah. I suppose I always think playing against the wind as a goalkeeper, obviously it's going to invite the opposition on, but the tendency can be sometimes is to try and kick the ball harder into the wind from the kick out. Excuse me. That you're trying to put that extra bit to make sure you get that distance. But that's often when it can go wrong. I always say, just back your technique. If you're kicking into a strong wind, back your technique. And if you get the technique right and you hit the sweet spot, the ball will travel with the right trajectory. And it still may not go as far as with the wind, but it'll cut through it nicely. Instead of going away from your technique and trying to put that extra bit on it. It's like if anyone plays golf, I don't know, but when you're trying to drive the ball and you really try and put too much behind it and it dribbles off the tee box. That would be a big one for the kick out in conditions. As well, from the kick out, if conditions are very bad, obviously wind and wet, it might make you rethink some of the kick out, like a kick out along the ground to a wing or a centre back who's running straight to you. It might not be the conditions for that, greasy ball, heavy pitch maybe. Because you have to play it as you see it, maybe. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent, Brendan. I suppose, look, on behalf of Coaching Games, I'd like to thank you, Brendan, for presenting to us tonight and sharing your knowledge with us. It was really informative. I'm sure everyone who tuned in tonight would have got something from the presentation, and we will be planning on incorporating specific coaching for your goalkeepers when they return to the field, I suppose. Again, we'd like to thank everyone who tuned in tonight and the last couple of weeks with our webinars. Tonight's presentation, I suppose, would also be up on our Kerry Coaching Games YouTube channel, I suppose, in the next few days. So anyone wants to log into it, and to feel free to have a look at it, and I suppose share with your goalkeepers and your club. And we'll be in touch again in the next few weeks, I suppose, about our upcoming webinars. So just go to Mina Mahagav, and I hope everyone has a happy and safe Easter. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye, folks.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks for that, Brendan. Cheers.